Let's talk about some Naruto, people. Let's talk about a character I really, really like in the Naruto world, the Naruto manga, the Naruto anime, the Naruto franchise. And that character is Kankuro. He is one of the Sand 3 siblings that we meet in the Chunin exams in part 1 of Naruto. He is the brother of Gaara, the brother of Temari. He's the middle child, and yes, he really does feel like the middle child of the three. Of the three, I feel like he got the least amount of character development. Gaara got the most out of the three, and I feel like Temari got the second most because of her relationship with Shikamaru that helped push her over the edge. I feel like Kankuro kind of just got left behind in a way, where he just kind of became Gaara's #1 bodyguard, mostly only because Temari kind of had other things going on in her life, like wanting to be with Shikamaru, sort of. I don't know. She was kind of flirting with the idea in Shippuden, and then it kind of just happened at the end. Ever since their fight in the Chunin exams, it was sort of developing. It almost felt like it was bound to happen. It was destined to happen. They do have the best relationship, in my opinion, in the entire series. Regardless, today I want to talk about Kankuro. This man has one of the most unique looks in the entire Naruto world. He wears that full body outfit. He carries that giant wrapped up crow doll. And I'm talking about his original look from part 1 Naruto, my personal favorite look. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. When he showed up, he kind of was like a big bully to Naruto. He kind of bumped into him when Naruto was messing around with Konohamaru. And I think Naruto was trying to defend Konohamaru when he met him. Him and Temari were there. They kind of felt like they were a little older than them. They've been doing this a little longer. They're from a village where it's a little grittier. He didn't want to deal with little snot-nosed brats like Naruto. I mean, there was a lot of mystery revolving around Kankuro when we first met him and his sister, and of course Gaara. And I think people kind of forgot about Kankuro once Gaara jumped onto screen. I think he was upside down on a tree, and he basically told Kankuro to fucking calm down, or he's gonna make him calm down, or stop causing problems, if I remember correctly. He was very subservient to Gaara when he was afraid of him, and it was, I don't know, I think Gaara was very cool. When you first meet Gaara, he's just an emo-y kid, very, what would you call it? Very, I don't know, he's got the black circles under his eyes, very cool, quote unquote, and he was so naturally gifted with his sand shield and his ability to manipulate sand. He was OP at the time, and he was, even throughout the series, if he did no training whatsoever, he was already at a level of strength that he could probably go. It would have took even somebody like Kakashi at the time. Oh, it would have been really hard for somebody like Kakashi to beat Gaara, even as a child. That's how cool Gaara was. So the word I was looking for was edgelord. Yes, he was very edgelordy. And if you thought Sasuke was an edgelord, look at Gaara. And I think the same people who were big Sasuke fans became really big Gaara fans. And of course, they were meant to clash. And they were kind of setting that up early on before the Chunin exams really began. And I think it overshadowed our boy Kankuro. I'm a big fan of Kankuro. He is my favorite of the Sand Village. He's not my favorite character in the entire series. I will say that right here, right now. My favorite character in the entire series has to be Rock Lee, followed by Shikamaru, then Kakazu, Zabuza, and then maybe right there underneath that would be Kankuro. And I feel Kankuro didn't get his just desserts in Shippuden. I think he was perfectly handled in Part 1 Naruto. Let's go over that just a little bit before we get into the Shippuden part of things. I feel like Kankuro had a really good start. He had a lot of mystery around him. Obviously, he wasn't portrayed as the strongest member from the Sand Village, but he was portrayed as somebody as a threat to the Leaf Village ninjas. And his fight in the before we get into the preliminary Chunin exams, one of the first things that stands out in my mind, and I haven't, it's been a minute since I've watched. I didn't go refresh all these Kankuro highlights. This is off the top of my head, people. One of my favorite things that happened with him during the Chunin exams, the writing portion, the actual physical test, was that he used his puppet. I don't know how this really worked, but he placed his puppet into the testing room and made it into one of the I don't know the word, but he was basically pretending to be one of the Chunin that was examiners. He was pretending to be one of the examiners, and at one point Kankurō raised his hand and says, "Can I use the potty?" And he used his doll as the fake examiner that went with him to the bathroom, and somehow also got all the answers to the test, which I believe he took and passed around to, or at least I believe he also gave the answers to the test to Tamari, or she just solved them herself because she's a very smart ninja herself. But I love the tactical way he was able to use his puppet. I feel like it's something that these Chunin or Jonin level ninjas should be like, that's obviously a puppet. But maybe Kankuro's just such a good puppet user, even at that young age, that he was able to get past them. I mean, I don't think they would just see this puppet. I wasn't sure if they were just if they saw a really cool spy-style technique to help them cheat, did they just let it slide because they're like, okay, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do during this test. They're supposed to use their abilities to cheat, and I'm a Jonin, and obviously I see that examiner there is a fake examiner puppet, but the average person wouldn't notice that. I'm going to let it slide. I'm going to let him do that because he's doing what he's supposed to do. Or Kankuro's so good at being a puppet master and using his chakra that he was able to make the puppet look like a real person, and they weren't able to decipher it, at least in enough time that he couldn't cheat doing it. And he was able to do it quickly enough without having to sit there and mold the doll and make it look like he must have used chakra. That's the only way he did it, and he must have been very sneaky at it, and he did it, and he made it happen, and he passed the test. Either way, I thought that was really cool, and it's a neat way to do ninja stuff. Then later on, in the Chunin exams preliminary rounds, he went head-to-head with one of Orochimaru's little jobbers, one of Kabuto's ex-teammates in the Chunin exams. He beat him very quickly, and I think that's one of the reasons that people don't talk about this fight. This is when we first found out he had a puppet, I think. Really found out he had a puppet, Crow, because he had him disguised as himself, and the real Kankurō was actually on the back of the doll for who knows how long that was going on. My assumption is he was pretending to be, he had the doll shaped as him the entire time, or maybe he's able to make the switch right before the fight. But either way, the dude used the opponent, one of the Orochimaru's little minions, wrapped himself around him because he could dislocate his joints, and was like, "I'm going to break your neck if you don't give up." And Kankurō was like, "Go for it, bud." And he breaks his neck. But it turns out that he was Crow, the puppet, the entire time. And the actual Kankurō was wrapped up in those bandages that he had the puppet normally wrapped up in. And it was a cool bait and switch. And then he broke the other dude's back. I assume he didn't die. I think he showed up again in a filler episode or something. But I like to think that Kankuro killed the guy because he doesn't give a shit, but I don't think they were allowing murder in those fights, so I assume that he did not die. But he basically could have murdered that no-name Orochimaru follower dude. Either way, from there, Kankuro, Temari, and Gaara, after an amazing legendary fight with Rock Lee, which is another reason I think that Kankuro's fight was forgotten and never really mentioned among the fandom, is because of Gaara's amazing one-on-one with Rock Lee that I believe is the greatest fight in Naruto history. Either way, I think that just seeing Kankuro use his puppet-style jutsu early on and us figuring out how he uses it was pretty cool. I mean, really, Kankuro is one of 3 ninjas in the entire original series from Naruto to Naruto Shippuden that had a lot of screen time. Himself, Lady Chiyo, and Sasori. And really, Kankuro was supposed to be the main one, if you ask me. He was the first introduced, and I think that he was supposed to be our main puppet user, and there's not a lot of them. There ain't a lot of puppet users in this universe. There's a lot of them. I guess there's like a unit of them in the Sand Village, but not necessarily, there's not a lot of puppet users in other villages, at least that I remember at all. They're the only village that developed this style of fighting. And the weird fact is that Kankuro, as a middle child of the, 4th Kazekage, decided that he wanted to be a puppet user. I don't think his father was a puppet user. No, he was a manipulator of gold, and he was more like Gaara than anything else. And I know Kankuro, if he wanted to, he probably could have chose a different style of jutsu, but he decided to develop his puppet master style, which is insane because it seems like a very technical style of jutsu. But my assumption is once you get it down, it can be very powerful. I mean, if you look at Lady Chiyo at her age, how powerful she was, or if you look at Sasori, how powerful he was, it can lead to becoming a Akatsuki level ninja. Above it's something unique. It's just, in my opinion, it probably takes a lot of work. It's not a thing you choose because I don't want to be in the front lines, so I want to have this puppet be the thing that takes all the damage for me. If you ever play like the Naruto video games, it's pretty cool because you can move the puppet in front of you, and it technically is like a shield. And in the Naruto world, the way he uses the puppet, he could also use it as a fake out, as a clone, but a physical clone that won't disappear technically like a shadow clone. Either way, from there, we get to the Chunin exams, and Kankuro decides to bow out of the Chunin exams, and in a lot of ways I was disappointed at the time, and I still to this day wonder what would have happened if Shino and Kankuro fought in the arena instead of in the woods. I think that Shino had the advantage in the woods than he would have in the little open arena surrounded by people watching the show. I think that if Kankuro decided to fight him in the actual tournament, he would have won that fight hands down because Shino wouldn't have had as many bugs around to manipulate. I know he carries his own bugs. 1. 2, I think he would have had less places to hide, but I guess you could say the same for Kankuro because he was doing a lot of hiding in the woods, manipulating puppets. Either way, he bows out and Shino moves on automatically. I was a little disappointed at the time, but story-wise, if you wait and you get to the Konoha Crush arc, when the Sound Village and the Sand Village decide the attack begins, and Kankuro ends up taking Gaara and Temari, and they all go into the woods, and Shino decides to follow along, and he goes head-to-head with Kankuro. In this fight, I believe, is one of the most underrated fights in the entire series, hands down. Nobody talks about this fight, and when they do, they don't talk about how fun it was. Shino at the time was one of the coolest members of the Leaf Village that we didn't know a lot about yet. He was a kind of a mystery. We learned a little bit about him during his fight with Zaku in the preliminary rounds, but this fight really told us who Shino was as a ninja. And his fight with Kankuro, like, you really didn't know who was going to win, and would Kankuro actually kill this kid? And Shino just seemed so confident, and it's weird because Shino was with Kiba and Hinata. They're in that group, and you kind of think because how boisterous Kiba is, that Kiba is the strongest member of the three. But in all realities, Shino is one of the strongest members of the Leaf Village children. Hands down. He's probably up there with Naruto and Sasuke. I really couldn't tell you if Shino went head-to-head with Sasuke in the Chunin preliminary rounds. I could have seen Shino winning that fight with his bug mystery jutsus alone. Like his parasitic insect style jutsus that are very hard to counter. I mean, he's very confident in the way he fights. He's very Anbu Black Ops style of fighting. He was very mysterious. And the fact that he was kind of creepy. And the fact that Kankuro had to fight this guy. And the other thing is, Shino's kind of a strategist like Shikamaru. Not to his level, but he's physically able to throw a punch, and he has his bugs as a secondary army to help narrow the playing field. So this fight with Kankuro is forgotten mostly because it's sandwiched between the legendary Chunin exams finals and the big giant fight with Gaara and Sasuke and Naruto. So you kind of forget about this fight. When I listen to other reviews of the Chunin exams of Part 1 Naruto, they skip Shino versus Kankuro for unknown reasons because it's a really good battle and it actually ends up in a draw. So there was another draw in the Chunin exams preliminary rounds, and it was Ino versus Sakura, and I feel like that was an unearned draw, and I think that one of them should have won. Primarily, I think they should have allowed either Sakura to win and their rivalry to end, or Ino to win, so then later on in Shippuden, Sakura could then fight Ino and then prove that she's way stronger later on. I don't know. But the fight with Shino really felt like Shino and Kankuro were on a literal equal playing field ability-wise. And when they ended up in a draw, it felt earned. It felt I was okay with it. And the fact that neither of them died, there was a poisoning aspect to it. But you got to think that with Shino's bugs and with Kankuro probably putting poison into his body just to make himself immune to most poisons, that they wouldn't die, but they would just be in shitty states. So that was a really good fight. And then to cap it all off, Kankuro and Gaara make up as brothers. And I wish they developed that a little bit more. Because you got to think Kankuro is Gaara's older brother, and there had to be a point. I mean, it seems like to me Kankuro feels a lot for Gaara, but then when Gaara became this monster growing up, Kankuro developed this hatred for his little brother, and kind of probably wanted him to die a little bit. But then later on, he's like, man, I should have been there for him. I should have helped him get through this. I'm going to stand by him from now on. And I think that that's pretty cool. It's a cool little thing, that little brotherly bond there going on between Kankuro and Gaara that we didn't get from Sasuke and Itachi because they were feuding in a way. And I think that it would have been cool to see more of Kankuro and Gaara and Tamari's family bonds later on. But either way, down the line, in one of the best arcs in any anime, the Sasuke retrieval arc, Kankuro, Tamari, and Gaara show up to save Kiba, Shikamaru, and Rock Lee from the Sound 5. And that was pretty dope. One of the most memorable moments in the entire series. Blew me away when I found out that the Sand Village 3, I knew they were kind of turning into good guys, but I didn't know they would actually come back into the story, because the story really felt centered around the Leaf Village ninjas, and maybe we might see them again down the line, but I never thought we'd see them show up, because Tsunade got a hold of the Sand Village and was like, we need backup. We don't have anybody to send out to help our Genin and Shikamaru out. We need to help them so we can save Sasuke. Do you have anybody that can go out? And my assumption is Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari were like, hey, they helped us. Let's go help them. They show up. Kankuro in particular shows up and is ruthless as all hell. Used his new puppet. I don't think it was Ant. It might have been Ant. But he used his new puppet and he used Crow and he combined them and he did the Iron Maiden technique and it was brutal as all hell. Killing Sakon and Yukon. And I really enjoyed that little... It was a short fight. His fight with Sakon and Yukon was very short, and so was Temari's fight. And I feel like they were both overshadowed by the amazing fight of Rock Lee and Gaara versus Kimimaro. Because Kimimaro is one of my favorite villains in the entire series. Not my favorite, but one of them. And that fight was so amazing, and it's been used in all the animated music videos, and there's a reason for it. The animation is gorgeous. They gave a lot of time for it. This dude was insane. Whereas when Kankuro showed up, his opponent was already on his last leg. But he did not give a shit, and he just murdered the dude. It would have been interesting if Kankuro decided to leave one of the two brothers alive and take them in as for interrogation. And if he made that decision on his own and was like, nah, we're going to bring you in to the Leaf Village so they can learn some shit about Orochimaru. That would have been interesting, and an interesting thing for him to do that his sister and brother didn't do. They killed their opponents, or Kimimaro basically just died. But Kankuro gets a win here. This is where things start to go sour for Kankuro in Shippuden. Yes, I felt at this point in the story they show up. They become main members of the gang. They're not Leaf Village Genin, but they're main members of the main cast, the side characters. You think, we're going to get a lot more of these Sand Village 3. And we do get a lot of Gaara and a lot of his backstory. And then his big fight with his father down in the war. But it feels like Kankuro didn't get that big arc. He really just became Gaara's bodyguard. He got an amazing little fight with, I wouldn't say amazing, quote unquote, but I would say a good little fight with Sasori, the puppet master of this universe, and member of the Akatsuki, and he lost pretty easily, and they didn't even show it in the manga. They actually showed the fight in the anime, and he lost and almost died, and if it wasn't for Sakura, Kankuro would have died. It makes me think that maybe he should have died, so it would have shown just how dangerous and ruthless these members of the Akatsuki are. But I mean, later on, Asuma dies, so it kind of makes up for it. And maybe it would have just not been as impactful if Kankuro died. But at the same time, later on, Gaara dies when he gets the sand spirit ripped out of his body, but then gets revived by Lady Chiyo. So it makes you wonder if they had killed Kankuro in this fight with Sasori trying to save his brother, but then later brought Gaara back. It wouldn't have felt like such a weird, oh, you killed Gaara, but now he's back again. Very Dragon Ball Z-like. But in exchange, we're going to do this because, we killed off a character earlier. Doesn't matter. I'm glad Kankuro didn't die. It really showed off how strong Sasori was before he went on to fight Sakura and Lady Chiyo, and it showed just how good of a puppet master Lady Chiyo was and Sasori was. I mean, these three have to be the top three diggity dogs, and Kankuro is the only one of them left alive who's also using one of the body of Sasori as one of his new main puppets, which is pretty cool. I know they teased Kankuro's death in Boruto filler. I actually have not watched any Boruto filler. I've skipped it all. But that's very interesting. It would have been a crazy thing to do, to just kill Kankuro and Boruto, and it would have been okay with me. He's not doing a whole lot. They didn't do a whole lot with Kankuro in Shippuden. And they didn't have to. He's not necessarily a member of the Leaf Village. But I just wish he could have gotten a major victory against I guess he does get a victory during the war against the Edo Tensei versions, sort of Sasori and Datara, where they capture them, and he talks Sasori into basically moving on into the afterlife, is kind of what I remember. I just wish that we could have seen more of Kankuro teaming up with Gaara and Tamari. Even if it was just Kankuro and Gaara teaming up in a battle against their father. Because you have to think that Kankuro had a lot more time with their father than Gaara did, and a lot more of a loving relationship. He was his first son. And he was alive when their mother was alive. You got to think that there's some feelings there. And the fact that Kankuro didn't actually get to interact there is a little frustrating. It would have been cool to see Kankuro go head-to-head with Sasuke during the Five Kage Summit thing, when Sasuke and his gang showed up. It would have been interesting just to see Sasuke just mop the floor with Kankuro. It just would have been cool to see Kankuro show up, pull out his puppets, try some new shit, and at least, get a couple licks in, and then Sasuke using some of his abilities and wiping the floor with the guy. Or just seeing the three of them team up and do an ultimate jutsu type technique. In the video game, they have a really cool three-way attack, and it's pretty dope. I just want to see more Kankuro, and I'm sure there are other Kankuro fans out there. I think he's so cool. His outfits are cool. His different designs are cool. His outfits change a lot throughout the series, and his face paint changes. But still, my favorite might be his original design, maybe just through nostalgia. And my favorite fight of his has to be him versus Shino. It was the most elaborate of the fights. It probably was more elaborate in the anime than it was the manga, but I think it's one of the most underrated fights in the entire series, Part 1 Naruto and Shippuden. And I just think the dude deserves more respect. He is the current puppet master. It would just be nice to see him do more. I know the series is over, and we're into the Boruto world, and it's Boruto's universe now, and unless you're Sasuke or Naruto, you're not going to really get a whole lot of screen time. But there's also the factor of Tamari being Kankuro's brother, and is now living in the Leaf Village. But it would be cool to see Kankuro have more interactions with Shikadai. He is Shikadai's uncle. It would be interesting just to see him and Shikadai bond. Or what could you imagine, Shikadai being such a strategist like his father before him, and he's also used some wind-style jutsus like his mother. It would be cool if he incorporated some puppet master jutsus to his arsenal. His uncle's the #1 puppet user right now that we know of, so why not let Shikadai? Could you imagine Shikamaru's a magic strategic ability mixed with the power of puppet style fighting? It's a match made in heaven, people. A match made in heaven. I'm Mr. Morfetto. What do you guys think of Kankuro? I think he's a very underutilized, underrated, and wasted a lot of his potential character in this Naruto world. Write down below in the comments, do you like him? Is he your favorite member of the Sand Village siblings like myself? Are you more of a Gaara fan? I'm also a huge fan of Tamari, but Kankuro takes it for me. Comment down below, share this video, tell your friends, and subscribe. If you have any other Naruto characters you want me to have a deep dive into, let me know, and I shall do that. I'll talk to you later.